Hey, what's happening? Every Nation Bryanston, Siviwe here, and as always, what a privilege it is for us to have you right here online in our YouTube channel. Do me a favor, particularly if this is your first or second time tuning in to our YouTube channel. Click on the connection card link below. It'll send you to a very brief form. And right at the bottom, you can choose one charity of your choice, and we'll donate 100 Rand to a charity of your choice just because you tuned in today. Now, we are all about knowing God and making Him known. And this whole series that we've been doing, if you don't know, on the Psalms has been helping us to know God better, to develop and discover a language of prayer. And we're heading towards the end of that as we draw close to the end of the year. Now, I've got one quick announcement regarding that's important for us to know. Now, at the launch of this video, it will be the 1st of December. We have 2 Sundays left, and then we will be closing down our Sunday services. So our last Sunday service will be on the 15th of December. It won't be in our normal venue. We'll be out in the field as we do every year and celebrate together, come have fun together, come spend some time together. And so we'll be giving details regarding that in the next coming week. Now, it's important for you to know this because we will then resume our first meeting in the new year on Sunday, the 5th of January. And so thereafter, we're going to be locked in as a church family into every year we do a 21-day fast. And so from the 6th of January, we're going to be doing a 21-day fast heading off to our 5-year anniversary. So big dates to remember. 15th of December will be our last service. We'll be out in the field, much fun, much food, and a whole bunch of good people. Then 5th of January, 2025, we'll be back in-person gathering. Between those times, we'll be sharing videos online that you can watch from home or wherever you are. In fact, I even encourage you, go visit other churches. Go pay a visit to our Every Nation churches around the city as well during that time. And we'll see you on the 5th of January. And thereafter, on the 6th, we'll begin our 21-day fast all the way to the end of January 2025. Now, today, as we continue with our series in the Psalms, my friend Lukola Kentane will be sharing the word. Now, we can tend to be confident about many things in life, but I hope that one of the things that we can be confident in is being confident in the Lord. Today, Lukola will be sharing from Psalm 16, teaching us about the importance of being confident in the Lord, trusting in the Lord.
Hi everyone, I hope you are well and you are good. Today's title talk is called A Psalm of Confidence. There's a powerful story in the Bible that reflects a deep and unwavering trust in God, the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel, an upstanding servant of God, was thrown into a den of lions because of his faith. The king, who had signed an edict forbidding prayer to anyone but himself, was deeply distressed when he saw that Daniel, despite knowing the consequences, continued to pray to God 3 times a day. Daniel's response to this dangerous situation was simple yet profound. His confidence was in God. When he was thrown into the den, he wasn't trembling in fear. Instead, he knew that God was in control. Psalm 16 reads as this: "Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones, in whom is all my delight. The sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply. They drink offering of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lions have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At the right hand are pleasures evermore. In this psalm, David reminds us that whatever we place our trust in will ultimately shape the direction of our lives. If we place our trust in fleeting things, in our emotions, in our accomplishments, in our achievements, we may find ourselves more lost and more disappointed. But when we place our trust in God, when we allow him to be our refuge and our portion, we find true security and joy. You see, this is the confidence that David speaks of in Psalm 16. And it's the confidence that can guide us through all of the winds of life, through all of the trials and through all of the challenges, through all of the good seasons and bad seasons, through all of the obstacles that we will face in life. We can have confidence in God. Today, we will explore what it means to have confidence in God, and we will see how we can how relying on God will shape our lives, and how practicing his presence brings lasting joy and fulfillment. Let's journey together as we look at Psalm 16. I'll be looking at 3 themes: God's power, mine or our practices, and his presence. God's power. What or who holds power in your life? Because what you rely on shapes your identity, which then ends up controlling your priorities and then determines your ultimate security. Psalm 16 reveals that lasting confidence can only come from trusting God and not trusting in our achievements, not trusting in our accomplishments, not trusting in our connections, but only trusting in God. David opens up Psalm 16 and he says, preserve me, keep me, or save me, or some might say guard me. It's a plea of protection. It's a plea of saving. David is reminding himself where his ultimate help and his source of protection should come from. Jesus himself needed this same preservation, this same guarding, and he used it for us to also know that as his disciples, we should do that as well. We should cry out for God to preserve us. We should cry out for God to protect us. We should cry out for God to save us. I mean, if Jesus could cry out for protection, how much more should you and I do it? Maybe we don't do it because we have trust in other things. And these could be very good things. It could be our investments, the money and stuff that we've put aside. It could be the small but magnificent and great accomplishments, the things that you have done. It could be the great connections that you've made over the years. It could be the fact that you've got some great people around you. And so you trust that your squad, you trust that your family and your friends will take you through. It's the fact that we put all our trust in this basket of accomplishments, and these baskets of friendship, and these baskets of connections, and we rely less on God. Maybe some of us, it's not that we put all our trust in these baskets of accomplishments, but maybe we just plan and we pray less. We find ourselves planning a lot better. And so we think our acumen and we think our proper planning will give us the right outcome. It's difficult for us as a culture to scream these words, preserve me and save me, because we daily live our lives on self-reliance. We live our lives on accomplishment reliance. We live on our lives based on what people think or what people say about us, because we've made up backup plans. We've made all the right connections. And so we find ourselves praying less and planning more. We find ourselves praying less and trusting other people more, relying on other people to help, or to save you, and hardly asking God. And you see, these things that we love so much, these precious things, our lives, our careers, our families, our dreams, we take these precious things and we speak about it to everyone else except God. You see, what you depend on ultimately shapes and controls your life. You see, the things that you lean on for security, the things that you lean on for guidance, and the things that you lean on for fulfillment will dictate your decisions and the path that you take. It's not the fact that just what I depend on shapes my life and controls my life, but also the things that you trust the most often hold the greatest influence over your life. The thing that you trust the most, the thing that you go to when you need help, the thing that you go to when you need protection holds the greatest influence over you. You see, when you put your trust in something or someone, it gains authority over your life. It's not just that what you depend on ultimately shapes and controls your life, and the things that you trust the most has the most authority over your life, but also your source of reliance becomes the source of your strength or your bondage. Friends, who has power over you? Is it yourself? Is it your people? Is it your family? Is it your accomplishments or how great you are, what people think about you? This is why David says, "For in you I take refuge, I say to the Lord." David wants, and who has the most power? David wants who has the most power in his life to be God. He wants God to be his refuge. He wants God to be his hiding place. He wants God to be his source of safety. He wants God to be his sense and source of security. He wants God to be the one who fulfills his desires. He wants God to be the one who gives a meaning. He wants God to be the one who gives him purpose. David says, "In you I take refuge." He says, the place where I go to for safety, I want it to be God and God alone. He wants God to have all power over his life. He wants God to have all authority over his life. Who has power over you? Is it yourself? Do you dictate the direction of your life? Is it because you've achieved specific things and people have placed specific ideas in your life? Is that what is controlling the direction that you are even taking currently in your life? Who has power over you? That's why the psalmist says, "You are my Lord," reminding himself that I have no good apart from you. God is his supreme treasure. God is his supreme joy. There is no good for him above God. There is no good for him apart from God. God is his supreme joy. God is his supreme treasure. That there's nothing else that is good apart from who God is. The psalm continues in verse 3-6, and it says, "As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones in whom is all of my delight. The sorrows of those who run after another God shall multiply. They drink offerings of blood. I will not pour out or take their names on my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup, and you hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance." You see, in verse 3, the psalmist writes that God is his delight, that God is his joy and his pleasure. And because God is his joy and God is his pleasure, then the people that worship his God also give him pleasure. He's not in any sense saying that he is appreciating God more than the people that follow God or the people of God. He's basically saying people who are influential, people who are famous, people who have money, people who have great connections don't impress him if they do not follow God. He says his delight are in those people who worship and follow God, people who treasure God and people who follow God. That's what following God does. You sort of find that the people who had power over you have less power because now you follow God. And so the people who follow God bring you so much joy and bring you so much delight. In verse 4, he quickly changes and he underlines his radical preference to God by putting it negatively. He values God so highly that he will not dare, not even think running to other gods. He says, the sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out or take their names on my lips. In other words, it's sheer foolishness to turn away from the all-satisfying God only to embrace gods that leave you more sorrowful, more disappointed, and more sad in the end. The psalmist says, no, I'll never do that. I won't even put their names on my lips. You see, friends, David has confidence in God's power over his life. I hope he does in your life as well. Now, let's look at his practices or our practices. Moving on in verse 7 up until verse 10. It says, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand and I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol or let your Holy One see corruption. My or our practices. You see, our confidence grows with constant reliance on what we trust. Not just our confidence, but also the strength of our trust is directly tied on how regularly we depend on that source. The last thing is we deepen our confidence. We deepen our confidence by repeatedly turning to what we believe can sustain us. Practice listening to God's counsel. In verse 7, the psalmist says, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. He says, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel, meaning I worship the Lord. I acknowledge the Lord. I am grateful for the Lord. I will bless the Lord who gives me counsel. You see, a life rooted in God's guidance brings an unshakable stability. The challenge with us is that sometimes, if you're anything like me, I go to God for his guidance for things I've already made up my mind on. And so when the things I've made up my mind on and I go to prayer wanting to feel better about the decisions that I've made, I then end up saying prayer is not for me. Prayer just doesn't work. The psalmist here says, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel, because the counsel of the Lord is not just going to lead you to all the places and all the things that you want to achieve. Yes, he can make it happen, but it's not all the time. I'm just struck that the psalmist says, I bless the Lord for his counsel, because sometimes the counsel of the Lord is not going to lead you to a place of comfort. It might not lead you to a place of prosperity. It might not lead you where things look, sound, and are so much more better. But the psalmist here says, I bless the Lord. Why? Because even if the Lord's counsel leads you to a place that is difficult and hard, you still will be on solid ground. You still will be on solid ground because your trust will not be solely just on the direction. It will be on who God is. Knowing that God has a plan and a purpose. Knowing that God is with you. That's why a life rooted in God's guidance, God guiding your step, God directing your path, will bring an unshakable stability. Here the psalmist blesses the Lord who gives him counsel. You see, when we seek his counsel in all circumstances, when we go to God in prayer, he even shapes our decisions and gives us strength to stay in the place that he's called us to be in. So that's why we must seek him consistently, a resolve to daily inquire, a life that is surrounded by his direction and his purpose, a life that is saturated in prayer. You see, your heart will not instruct you by night if by day you haven't been saturating yourself in prayer. When you're about to sleep or when it's nighttime in your life and when it's dark, it's only because you've put in the necessary deposit of prayer during the day for you to reap these rewards of your heart instructing you at night. You see, friends, imagine this difference of a bypassing 5-second, 5-minute prayer here and there than a life that is consistently saturated in prayer. How different will you be? How different will your life be when prayer is not just a chore that you sort of feel like you do, but it becomes your very being, your very being. It becomes the breath that you breathe. Saturate yourself in prayer. Saturate your heart, saturate your soul. Let prayer be the one that massages your traumas. Let prayer be the one that massages your life. Let prayer be the one that gives you direction. Let prayer be the one that tells you all, because you are praying to God, that directs your next step. This is why Henry Nouwen, the profound Catholic priest and Harvard professor, said this. He says, discipline is the mark of discipleship. Prayer is the discipline of turning our hearts to God. Prayer is the discipline of turning our hearts to God. Meaning, normally our hearts don't want to be turning to God, but prayer is the deliberate practice, the consistent and daily practice of turning our hearts to God. You see, our confidence grows with a consistent reliance on what we trust. Pray, friends. Don't stop. The second thing is practice setting the Lord before you. Practice setting the Lord before you. The psalmist goes in verse 9 to 10 and he says, I have set the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand. I shall not be shaken. Therefore, my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol or let your Holy One see corruption. You see, stability and joy comes from consistently keeping God at the center of your life. The psalmist is so confident. He says, I shall not be shaken. Why? Because he has always set the Lord before him. It's rooted in this deliberate, consistent, daily practice of setting the Lord before me. I wonder if I set the Lord before me in my own life, how my anxious thoughts would subside. I wonder if I set the Lord always before me, how the decisions that I'll make will be so much more different when I dethrone everything and everyone else. I wonder what would happen to my overthinking if I set the Lord before me. I wonder how different your life would be if you were like David here and made it a daily, consistent resolve of always setting the Lord before me. This will result in a glad heart. This will result in a joyful heart. And this will result in a sense of security, because that's why the psalmist says, because he is at my right hand. Living your life with an awareness of God. Living with your life of not just having an awareness of God, but God is so in front of you that you are living a life that is worshiping him, but also fearing him, knowing that he is at your right hand. This assurance extends beyond just what happens in our current life, but beyond this life. As we see in verse 10, the psalmist says, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol or let your Holy One see corruption. This reflects a trust that God's protection encompasses both the present and our eternal future. Live a life with an awareness of who God is. Live a life with an awareness of how holy He is. Live a life of an awareness of how good our God is. But this sounds very nice. You've told me about the power of God and who has the most power. You've given me the practice, but how do I live this out in my life? Well, the last one is by valuing His presence. My last point, by valuing His presence. Presence is, he says this in verse 10. It says, "You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures evermore." You see, God's presence reveals the path of life. That's why the psalmist says, "You make known to me the path of life." God's presence is the source of ultimate guidance and direction. The psalmist declares, "You make known to me the path of life," meaning you make known to me the direction I should go, the steps I should go, the business deals I should take, what I should study, where I should go to live. You make known to me the path of life. But you only make known to me the path of life when I am near you, showing that being near to God illuminates our steps, showing that being near to God, He can give clear and better direction, showing that being near to God provides both clarity and wisdom for our journey. That's why the psalmist says here, "You make known to me the path of life." Why? Because you are living a life that is saturated in prayer. You are living a life that is in constant communication with God. You are living a life that is full of God. You see, when we give God full power over our lives and practice listening to Him, we discover His purpose and His plan for us. That's very important because sometimes we have our own paths that we want to take. We have our own directions that we want to take. There are things that we wanted to achieve at a specific age. There were places that we wanted to achieve. We've got lists of things that we want to do with our lives. But when we give full power and full authority over our lives and we practice listening to God in and through prayer, we discover His purpose and His plan for us. What does that mean? It means then your life does not become your own, meaning it becomes God's path and not your path. It's not that your dreams are not valid, but His plans and purposes are so much more higher and so much more greater for you. So drop that and allow Him to show you the path that you should take for your life. When you practice a life of listening to God in prayer, when you hand over the power, soon you will see His purposes and His plans for your life. Seeing that His plans and His purposes are so much more greater, are so much more grander for you. This is why N.T. Wright says this. He says that prayer is the way we plug into the energy of God. It's how we participate in His mission for the world. He gives this image of a plug and a plug source. And he says prayer is basically you taking that plug and putting it into a plug point. Prayer is a way we plug into the energy of God. Why? Because that's how we participate in what God wants to do in the world. Meaning our prayers are not just about ourselves, but our prayers are saying, Lord, where we are, how could you use us? Show me the things that you want me to see. Let me live a life that is honoring for you, but also what do you want to do in this world? Prayer isn't just getting our needs met, but prayer is meeting God. And as you meet God, you see the things that God is doing, that God is doing, and then you say, Father, I want to be a part of that. The second thing is God's presence fills life with joy and eternal fulfillment. You see, in God's presence, we find ourselves full of joy. and with pleasures forevermore. You see, this joy surpasses the fleeting pleasures of happiness. This joy far surpasses things happening in the way that you want them to. This joy far surpasses things happening for you to be happy. It's the ultimate reward of allowing God to have power over your life and following His guidance in practice. You see, this combination of surrender and obedience leads to a deep, unshakable joy that only comes from God. You see, in your presence, there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures evermore. This is why St. John Paul II, the Catholic priest, says, prayer is the foundation, the root, and guarantee of holiness in action. Prayer is the foundation. It's also the root and the guarantee of holiness in prayer. As I come into God's presence, I don't need a band, I don't need a church service, but I can come to God in prayer. And it's the root for me to live a life that honors Him. It's holiness in action. It's living a life that is holy. When I step out of that prayer closet, when I step out of that house, it is holiness in action. You see, whatever you depend on will ultimately control the direction of your life. And the things you trust the most have the greatest influence over you. And your source of reliance shapes the authority it holds in your life. May you fuel your dependency on God through prayer. May prayer be what drives your life. May prayer be the air that you breathe. May prayer be what you consistently and continually are doing, whether it's short or whether it's long, whether it's in the car or it's in the office, whether it's under your breath or it's out loud, whether it's in a different tongue or a different language, or it's you writing it down at your notepad. Whatever you do, may you fuel your life with prayer. May be the engine room of your life be prayer that is guided to God. May the secret of your life be sustained. And may your life be fruitful by you making time of deep enjoyment with Jesus. May prayer be this, deep enjoyment with Jesus. Dependency on God.
Hey family, I trust that message spoke to you, encouraged you, and that the word really helped you to draw closer to God and consider how you can not only trust in Him, but also how you can make Him your trust. Now, every single week we send you off with a blessing, and this week is no different. I hope that as you go into your week following the Lord confidently, that you would receive this blessing as you step into the next thing in your life. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause His face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you, and may He give you peace now and forever. See you next week.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchase of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is our assurance. Christ came down to save us, left His glory throne for wood and thorn and stone. This is our assurance. Christ showed that He loved us, with His blood atoned, purchased confidence. You have called me as your own, and you have proven it over and over and over and over